Let's welcome former senior counsel to President Trump, Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, always great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. I want to get your reaction first to all the moving pieces on the chessboard, right? Before we talk about DeSantis, the big question would be, is President Biden going to run again? He's not being very formal about making an announcement at this point. What are your thoughts on how things are going to start to look pretty soon?
Ironically, it's the Republican field that's really widening fairly quickly. And at least you have Ron DeSantis and former President Trump out there connecting with the voters this weekend. You had Joe Biden in Delaware again, and you had Kamala Harris in California again. I guess they're working from home every weekend. And Joe Biden is the odds-on favorite to be the Democratic nominee and to run again, because even though you have people like Senator Joe Manchin, whom I respect, and some others openly doubting Joe Biden's viability and openly discussing his vulnerability, the fact is these senators vote for the Biden agenda again and again, Jackie, almost 100% of the time. Yeah. So that's the difficulty, that when Joe Biden turns around and says, look, my bench is weak, he's right. If it includes people like Gavin Newsom, J.B. Pritzker, Kamala Harris, and Pete Buttigieg, you see Joe Biden. But the Republican field is really where the juice is right now, and the conversation that's animating the country. Former President Trump at CPAC talking about forgotten man, forgotten child, saying, I'm going to finish the job that I did. Give me 4 more years. Ron DeSantis challenging him without saying his name much, if at all. Yeah. Basically showing generational change without saying it the way Nikki Haley has. I don't know how much the woke agenda, though, is going to last in terms of the biggest issue. Jackie, we're on Fox Business right now. I have to say, I believe the candidate that comes forward with the most robust, credible, accessible, and doable economic plan is the winner.
I think you're right, because Americans are suffering across the board right now. The inflation wasn't transitory. The prices are still high. The energy policy hasn't changed. And it's been tough. But, you know, let's look to the right side of the field, as you mentioned there, and look at this CPAC straw poll, because actually President Trump is leading in that poll, 62%, 20% DeSantis. A lot of people don't know who Perry Johnson is. He's a businessman, 5%. And Nikki Haley is trailing with 3%. Your thoughts on these numbers, even though it's very early?
President Trump dominated CPAC. He has for years. They started calling it TPAC even before he was elected. And it's one of the early twinings we had in looking, if you read the tea leaves, in looking at Donald Trump's early strength. You know, he showed up at CPAC in, I think it was 2015, and he was probably the most popular speaker there, even though he didn't win the straw poll. But I think it's just his connection with the people. People talk about the base, Jackie, 74 million people, and the number of voters that he got in 2020, that's not a base. That's a very high number of Americans. And so many more are suffering economically and otherwise. But there will be competition. I know President Trump, he loves competition. He loves a good fight. And I think it's healthy to have competition. I thought it in the speaker's race. I'm glad that Kevin McCarthy made it. The Democrats have unanimity. The Republicans should have unity, but unity doesn't mean that only one person runs for president. It means that we suss out the candidates by having very important conversations. And look, President Trump next week, Governor DeSantis will both be in Iowa. I know President Trump is talking about education. We have a parents' rights movement that is just burgeoning across and blossoming across this country. I'm glad he's there to talk about it. And I think that there are other Republicans that are going to get into the race.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and the field will continue to expand. And there's part of it, as you mentioned, where there's an exchange of ideas and there's conversation that could be actually ignite the party in some ways. But also, you know, sometimes things get a little sticky, especially when candidates are in the debate stage, for example. Or there's even an issue of, you know, cannibalizing funds from each other and fundraising. You think about President Trump and Ron DeSantis competing and throwing a lot of different events in Florida. Your thoughts?
Oh, that's okay. Florida's a big state, probably as close to 30 million people at this point, about 21 million people or so. It's a big state, but and also a big party. Look, what I love, Jackie, is that this party, the Republican Party, it is growing demographically. For the second consecutive election cycle, we had a record number of women, candidates of color, and veterans running, or a combination thereof. And some of those first-time candidates came up short in 2022. I hope they'll run again, because good for them for doing that. And yet the Democrats are stuck with the old white liberal straight guy who's been in Washington for 52 years. Yeah. So I like the Republican Party's chances if they behave like Republicans, if they get back to fiscal sanity and credibility on the economy, on energy, security at the border, security in our communities, security abroad, and everyday affordability. And fairness. That's what this is.
Fiscal sanity would be a miracle. Kellyanne Conway, great to see you. Thank you so much.